Okay, so when you're building any React project, right? You've got files everywhere, dozens of them. But how do they all share code with each other? Well, today we're going to demystify the whole import and export system, which is basically the shipping department for your entire app. Let's get into it.
So the big question is, how do all these separate little JavaScript files in a React project actually communicate? I mean, really, think about it. You can imagine each file as its own little warehouse, full of stuff. And to get something from one warehouse to another, you absolutely need a shipping system. In the world of JavaScript and React, that system is import and export.
All right, first up, let's talk about shipping the main package. This is what you do when a file has one primary thing it needs to send out. Usually this is a big component, and we call this a default export. Check this out. Using a default export is super straightforward. Imagine your file has one main job, like defining this one header component. You just package that one thing up and you mark it as the default item to be shipped. This basically tells every other file, hey, if you ask for something from me, this is the main thing you're going to get. And here we are on the receiving end. When another file, like your main app.js file, imports that package, it's really simple. Because it's the default, you can give it any name you want when you bring it in. See? We just called it header. It's like getting a package in the mail and writing "my new gadget" on the box before you bring it inside. The name you give it is for your own convenience. So, this is absolutely crucial. You've got to remember this. The golden rule for default exports is you only get one per file. Just one main package from each warehouse. It keeps everything really simple and totally unambiguous. Okay, but what if your file isn't just one big component? What if it's more like a collection of smaller helper functions or maybe some variables? Well, for that, we use named exports. Think of it like opening up a parts box and shipping out very specific labeled items. Here's a great example of how that works. Imagine you have a utility file, maybe for some math functions. Instead of one main thing, you've got several individual tools you want to make available. So you export each one by name. You're essentially putting all these little labeled parts into a shipping box, ready for other files to pick out exactly what they need. Now, pay close attention to how we import these. The key difference here, and you can't miss it, is the curly braces. See those? Those braces act like a specific order form. They tell JavaScript, hey, I'm looking inside that math parts box for items with these exact names. You can't just grab the whole box, you have to ask for each part by its specific label. All right, so a quick recap of the rules for named exports, because this is the stuff you've got to know. You can have as many as you want in a single file. You absolutely must use those curly braces when you import them. And the names have to match perfectly. Sooner or later, you're going to run into a situation where you need to rename an import. Maybe the name is already being used. With a default import on the right, it's easy. You just give it a new name when you import it, like my header, symbol. But for a named import on the left, you have to be more explicit. You specify the original name, add, and then you give it a new name using the as keyword, like plus. It's like relabeling a specific part from the parts box before you use it. But here's the cool part. You don't always have to choose one or the other. Sometimes a file has a main purpose, a default export, but it also includes a few extra helper tools. And you can absolutely ship them all together in what we can call a hybrid shipment. Take a look at this. Here, we've got a single file, helpers.js, and it's exporting its main function, greet, as a default export. That's the main package, but it's also making a secondary utility, buy, available as a named export. This is a really common and powerful pattern for organizing your code. So how do you receive a hybrid shipment like this one? The syntax is very, very specific, so you'll want to get this right. You list the name for the default import first, in this case, greet. That's followed by a comma, and then you list any named imports you want inside the curly braces. The order really matters here. Default first, then the named ones. Whew, okay, that was a lot, I know. So let's pull all of that together into a simple, handy cheat sheet. This is going to help you remember all the key differences and decide which one you should be using. Okay, this table basically sums it all up. Look, for default exports, one per file, no curly braces needed when you import, and you can rename it to whatever you want freely. For named exports, you can have a whole bunch of them. You must use curly braces to import them, and if you want to rename one, you have to use that special as keyword. This is your go-to reference for sure. And hey, if you just want a really simple rule of thumb to remember all this, think of it like this. Use a default export for the single main thing a file is responsible for, like a big React component,
and use named exports for all the secondary helper functions or little constants that file might also provide.
So there you have it, the entire React import and export system, totally demystified. You now have the rules for sending out the main package, picking from the parts box, and even doing both at the same time. So the real question is, how are you going to use these patterns to structure your code and build cleaner, more organized applications from now on?